Welcome to the Bill and Gypsy Show.
Where we turn your wedding dreams of sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows
Into amazing experiences as we make you part of the story, and we will be your trusted and your experienced guides, along with our wonderful visitor today, Miss Annie Lee.
Bill Hansen has catered way over 10,000 weddings, starting back in the 1960s. And y'all, while he is 74 years young, he is not retired. He is actually pre-fired. His South Florida weddings at Villa Woodbine, the Sky Museum and Gardens, the Bath Club, Deering Estates, and over maybe 500 other venues are sought after with those folks with very distinctive tastes.
And ladies and gentlemen, couples of all ages out there, there's a lot more to Gypsy than sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. She's lived weddings her whole life, starting up in Nashville. And before that, she was actually out in sunny California in Hollywood. So she knows what works and she knows what doesn't work. She's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you're a couple out there watching this and you're all excited about your wedding coming up, but deep in your heart, you're frustrated, you're worried, you're confused, you're afraid you're going to get ripped off in one way or another. Today, you're going to learn how to create oohs and ahs during your wedding and afterwards.
Thank you, Bill. On today's show, you just mentioned on top of the hour that Annie Lee is the daughter of an interior designer, the principal planner of Daughter of Design, the founder of Planning Annie, I'm sorry, and the author of Learn to Speak Weddings, Flashcards for Beginners. Miss Annie, thank you so much for being part of the show. She's going to let us know about all it takes to planning a wedding and all events. Her repertoire are folks such as Benefit Cosmetics, Beauty Blenders, Misty Copeland. I believe you planned at her wedding. So, Miss Annie, thank you so much for coming on the show, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Bill. Hi, Gypsy. How you doing?
Well, Annie, we're number one, very happy to have you join us and live down here in South Florida. And your reputation has preceded yourself. You're well known all over the world as one of the best and most competent and stylish bridal planners. And you're also an event planner, and you authored a book. So our first question is, how did you get started?
Okay, sure. So, as Gypsy mentioned, my family does interior design. So design, that whole aesthetic part was kind of just like the family business. I went to school in Northern California in Berkeley, and I started working with the San Francisco Opera, ended up moving to New York, and actually first job I had there was working at a bridal salon and selling wedding dresses, of all things, and then worked with the Tribeca Film Festival, doing their sponsorship events and marketing. And from there, it just kind of, I always joke that it was because I was being paid in hors d'oeuvres. I made very little working at the Tribeca Film Festival, and I went to the coolest parties, but I made no money. And so I needed to find a side job. And then I realized I had a little bit of a background in events, and I had actually part-timed with someone in the Bay Area doing wedding planning, just assisting a little bit, and realized I had a talent for it. It was kind of all my skills, in one job. And so I started to moonlight and do that on the side. And sure enough, in a couple years, I was like, wow, I have more work after hours than I do, before, and I have more potential to grow with this one. So in 2008, I made the leap and went full time. And I mean, that first year, what 2008 was like. Mm-hmm. And I grew by, I think it was something around like 200%. So I was like, oh my gosh, the first thing that'll go will be the planner, of course. But by some chance and luck and fortune, that was one of my biggest years of growth. And it just kept on going from there. So here we are 12 years later.
Wow.
Wow. I mentioned earlier that you are the daughter of a designer and all, so you grew up in that world. But did you get your passion for planning and designing because of that, growing into, being born to it? Is that what inspired you then with everything to move forward?
So, I mean, really great question. I think growing up, I didn't realize that, to me, it was obvious, like design and like where furniture belonged, what patterns went together. And then I was also a history major, so I'm really particular about like things being historically accurate and culturally accurate, because people will try to mix an Indian paisley and a Moroccan pattern together. I'm like, nope, two different countries, and two different time periods. I'll go somewhere and I'll like, actually, it's funny because then I was in Japan recently and I was like, nope, that's colonial mixed with like French provincial, like two of those don't go together. So I didn't realize growing up, I just thought everyone knew this, and that's how it was an obvious thing. And then I think when I started to get into my adulthood and go to see other people's homes, or just started to notice like, wow, I think it's a gift or a talent or something that I've been raised in, and I didn't realize that it's not so obvious to everyone, and that it's actually something I can benefit from and use in my career.
So when couples come to you and want you to help them plan your wedding, how do you go about combining what their wishes are
Yeah.
and combining their thoughts and dreams and desires with your wisdom, the things that work and don't work?
I mean, I've kind of created a craft around it. I could probably write a manual about how to very sensitively and gently remove ideas away from them. Like if it's contrary to what I believe is, tasteful or current or anything like that. So first meeting, always, I just let them dream big. And usually the questions I ask them are not about what do they envision exactly for the wedding. I ask them, what's your favorite hotel in the world? What's your favorite, like soap label? Anything that they find aesthetically pleasing, or a feeling or a place in the world that brings them like a happiness, right? You feel like you belong, you feel like that's a reflection of you, right? So if someone tells me hotel cost in Paris is just like, that's the mood, that they love that lobby, then I'm like, okay, got it. And so once I identify at least what their tone and style is, if they're like, I love rainbows and color and I want everything to be mismatched, and then we can still work with that, but it has to be within a few like design guidelines, right? So there's a lot of times, like I just did this really big wedding and she's got a big personality, big imagination. And we were just like constantly like tug of warring. And I was like, we can't do that because, and I'm very good about explaining why it doesn't work. And then I will always offer an alternative. So either somewhere else we can use that idea, or something else to replace that idea, because I don't want to just say no, cross my arms, but not be like actively trying to solve the problem. And also, I think we all know here, sitting in the industry for so long, we've seen trends come and go, and we know I can date when those like CB2 hanging, glass bulbs came in. We know exactly when mason jars were in. And people who come into weddings for the first time, and they're like their first entry onto like Pinterest, let's say, they get really excited. And, you see a lot of content from that time period and they don't understand, well, that's really dated actually, because that's actually from like 10 years ago. No one's doing that anymore. But it's obviously still very pretty, but at the same time, it's been done to death, right? And, I think one of the first things I get in like editorial inquiries, magazine editors will say, we don't want any more barns. We don't want any more mason jars. Send us something else. So it's actually, I usually let people just go ahead and pin in the beginning. I'm like, they'll realize that like the ideas that they had initially on the bottom sort of like evolve out. And it's just an education process really in the end of the day.
That's a great answer.
Right. You're connecting their thoughts, their dreams, their passions, and bringing them and streaming them right on target to what you know will work. And that's what's amazing about you. You started your company with planning, designing, and then went into that planning corporate events, connecting the planners to the clients. So tell us a little about Plan Annie. And we're going to talk about in a few minutes afterwards, we're going to talk about your weekly live worldwide conferences. But let us know about Plan Annie, how you went, why it's important to have a planner for a wedding or any social event.
And actually, so you actually bring up, it's actually Planny, but the way that you say it, it's exactly how my friends, how it all came about, because they used to call me Annie Planny, right? So then it just kind of stuck. And then me who loves to buy URLs, every time I think of one, I bought it, years and years ago before I even knew I wanted to do this. So to kind of explain to people what planning is, basically it's a platform where you can hire an event planner by the hour. And we have different local planners worldwide. So imagine you don't need a full service planner, or your event is smaller and it's just more like a dinner party or something. Maybe it's even like a, your office party, something that wouldn't really warrant hiring a full service planner. But at the same time, what's going to happen, right? Actually, what's really going to happen is, the caterers and the venues are the ones that end up doing a lot of the work. So this was kind of my solution for not only the clients to have access to a planner, but so that, planners could have more work and venues and caterers aren't doing the work that they're not supposed to, and they can concentrate on the food and the venue.
I love that answer. And I think is a good follow-up, question. I think we should address the other P word, which is price. And could you give us a rundown on not only your prices, but prices that couples can expect to pay for various, planning alternatives, different types of planners, because, planners are like cars. You can get a wonderful car for a little money, or you can get a Bentley, or even something better than that. So how does price fit into the equation when couples are planning their wedding?
So great question. And, I like the car analogy. The one thing that's different in like the wedding world, let's say, is that it varies regionally, right? So, this Mercedes-Benz would cost the same in California or Idaho. However, with wedding and wedding planners, the way that it's usually done is through a package or a percentage. That's the two main ways that planners charge. And if you go to cities like, for example, I think I did like a little survey in Florida locally, the average full service planner, I would say, is about $10,000. And in New York, I would say the average full service planner is about 20 to 25,000. So obviously it varies, there's a big gap, but you see that with everything like real estate or, all those kinds of services. So that's kind of at a whole what it is. Now with Planny, you're literally paying sometimes like 100th of that, because you're only paying by the hour, and sometimes hourly rates are as low as $75. And it'll just, again, it varies by region, because, a lot of New York City planners will have a higher hourly rate, of course, because their time is valued a little bit differently because of I always boil it down to whatever their overhead costs are, right? Their cost of living, what their salary is. So that's kind of what determines the rates. But again, just the concept that a full service, which is, tens of thousands of dollars in most cases, versus a couple $100s. It's still being able to, in many ways, being able to access and work with the top planners in your area, yet at a very affordable price, is kind of the idea there.
So a quick follow-up question before Gypsy jumps in is, so if I'm hearing you right, there are planners in every price range, and by going to Planny, you can help them find the planner that best fits their budget and their style and their needs.
Absolutely. So, that's actually a good point. Like, even if my wedding was in New York, but I'm not really I don't need, let's say, a planner to answer a New York specific question. Like, I don't need them to tell me the local venues or something like that, where I just maybe want help with building a timeline.
Mhm.
Why don't I work with someone from Florida or someone from a different state who has the same skill set? They don't have the local expertise, but I don't need that. So I can work with someone on a different budget.
Awesome.
That's a great, yeah. And with the weekly live worldwide conferences you have, that's a way that connects you all together, right? Is that so? Tell us a little bit about that conference and what you all gain through this
Yeah.
conference.
So really, it's just a Friday Instagram Live. I do one every week at 2:00 Eastern time with a different planner from around the world. And so we've had someone from Paris, Santorini, Bali, Atlanta, and it's just really interesting to have a conversation with them and ask, what are some local traditions and fun things? Like, I didn't know, and Gypsy, you might know this, but in the South, I guess you bury a bottle of bourbon. So
Yes.
I had no idea. I've I grew up in California and moved to New York, and I don't know that we do that here in South Florida, really.
Oh,
but
yes. There was just actually recently one found and made national news, but that's another story. But
oh no,
yeah.
okay. So, but stuff like that, I love hearing about what are some local traditions. Like, I was talking to a planner we did one with Beirut, and when you're newlywed, you put kind of like a dough. You like slap it on the front of your door, and that's how people know that you're newlyweds. And you just kind of leave it there till it falls off, I guess. But all of these local traditions, I love learning about it. It probably goes back to my history, the history major in me. But at the same time, right now, with everything that's going on, it's so key because we all know like what's exactly happening in South Florida. We know exactly what's happening in our market, and people can watch it on the news. And I'm getting family calling me from Korea worried about like they think it's just everywhere. I'm like, no. I mean, there's people going to nightclubs, but I'm safe.
Right.
And you see the news and you get scared and you don't know what's really going on. So this is what I like. I like talking to real locals who tell us what's going on. And actually, at first it was really about like, oh, is your part allowing postponements? And now it's kind of morphed into, how are you reopening? And actually, this kind of brings me to, and I haven't really said this publicly, so you guys will have the scoop. We're working on a list that's going to be divided by region and district and down to however the jurisdictions rule reopenings. And we're going to keep one master current list of a global guide, meaning if I want to know, what are the rules? How many people am I allowed to have? Do I have to wear masks? Like, every state and city in the US, it's like, it varies so much versus like somewhere I was talking to, Greece, they have one rule. Guatemala, one rule. And even I talked to this morning to Amy Zaroff, if you know her, in Minnesota, out of Minneapolis, or Minnesota, one rule. Florida, county, and then you go to the county site, but they're like, but also check each city's site to see what the rules are. So, it's hard for professionals. I mean, it's definitely hard for clients to stay on top of like these ever-changing rules. So I just want I'm having local representatives in every territory, and just, please update this one guide. So I at all times know it's 50% capacity, or, max indoor is this, max outdoor is that. And I'm not trying to make it political. I'm not trying to make it an opinion piece. I just want to gather the data, and what you do with it is on your own. Like, if you want to take the liability, chance just to have the business, but full well knowing that 75 people is the max, it's up to your business. You do whatever you want, but here is the information clearly stated.
So Annie, other than rules and regulations that are promulgated by various states and cities, et cetera, what are some of the other things that you see in the future with regards to the planning process for weddings, say those weddings that aren't going to be affected by what's going on right now, but let's say those weddings in early to mid to even late 2021, what are you seeing out there?
So I'm a huge trend follower. So this is a great question for me. I mean, like it's kind of like I always talk about in 2008. I don't know if people realize the reason why the rustic look came in right at the same time of the financial crisis was because people wanted to still have lavish events, but it just couldn't look ostentatious, right? Like you couldn't have these lavish events because it was very insensitive. So post-COVID, I mean, these are a few of my initial thoughts of what I think the trends are going to be. First of all, as much as I'd love travel to just like, pick up and take off again, I think there will be a lot of domestic destination events, meaning people don't want to fly internationally. And personally, as someone who's studied insurance policies for events like deeply over these last couple of months, event cancellation insurance doesn't work necessarily if you go overseas or abroad. Some countries, yes, but it really covers you only if the event occurs within the US. So what does that mean? I think places like South Florida might get an uptick for people who are trying not to go to other tropical locations. Yeah, I mean, and then even, I posted, when I was doing the Atlanta talk, I posted like one of the Swan mansions they had there, and people were like, whoa, where is that? Like, it looks like somewhere in Spain. And I'm like, no, it's actually, or like, it's just a beautiful villa that exists down here in Georgia. So I think there will be some discovery on domestic beauties that we have and venues and that kind of stuff. And I do think with this whole small wedding trend, I mean, it's half like fear of gathering a large group, but I think aesthetically there will be some sort of shifts in having that smaller function. And I don't know if it's going to be like 2008 where they, certain people who were a little bit not as affected by the crisis and by financial, situations, they were still able to budget for the same amount, right? So if it becomes a situation where they're budgeting the same towards an event, yet have reducing the guest count, we could be looking at like, nicer wine and, more choices of options or more decor or whatever it might be. So I can see kind of that possibly happening and sticking around for a little bit.
Right.
I tell you what, before I ask you my last question, something I learned from you just now. I mean, I learned a lot, but okay, so when you mentioned that in 2008, the rustic look became popular, okay, I just want to let you know that we all thought in Tennessee and some other places like, oh, people figured out. We had no idea it had to do with that. We all thought they finally liked the mason jar. They finally liked the farm tables. And no one idea that we became famous with our concept because of the crisis. Well, I learned something new, that's for sure.
I mean, and this is true. I mean, like if you live in a region where that's actually your aesthetic, it's not a trend. That is it, right? I'm talking about a New York City girl who's like adamant about having mason jars in the Plaza Hotel. That is that's a trend versus like natural, wherever, you're doing mason jars and barn weddings are going to always make sense in certain places in the world.
Right, but we just thought like, ooh, people caught on with art.
Yeah.
No, I find this out X number of years later. But okay, so with everything we've learned today, as we're closing the show, what is the one advice that you always have for a couple when it comes to planning? Just the main advice that you have when you first sit down with them.
The main advice I have, and I'll never change this probably, is that if things don't go as planned, and people think that we're us sitting here, we're the like craziest type A and we'll like lose our heads if things don't go as planned. It's not true. It's like, if it doesn't go as planned, none of your guests knew what the original plan was. So don't be so upset because we will figure out a solution. If it's something like the flowers were supposed to be more like blush pink, but then they came in a little bit stronger than that, and I know it's disappointing, no one else went to the sample meeting except for us. So it's okay. It's still beautiful.
Mhm.
And things are going to happen. And I think what people realize, like, if you've been to what, I mean, you all, I'm sure, have been to a wedding where there's like a downpour or some kind of, even like through a COVID situation, I think everyone realizes like how people actually bond through some sort of like somewhat seemingly like catastrophic event that might happen at your event. So just know and take it in stride and don't let it ruin your day. Because I see a lot of people like just, you know, not enjoy their day because they wanted it to be this like perfect. And there's no such thing as perfect. And it's just go
Yeah.
with it. No one knew what the original plan was supposed to be. Just have a good time. Let it go.
Exactly. I second that. I have told my couples for years and years, we're going to do absolutely the best job we can do planning. And we're going to make sure all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, but never, ever, ever expect perfection, because we're all human and people do from time to time make mistakes, or like you said, the weather's bad or whatever, or the limo at my son's wedding, the limo catering, the seniors broke down and we had to push it into
No.
Gaia. Okay, push it. But the wedding went off without a hitch. Or my favorite story is the bride whose wedding dress was stolen from her car 3 hours before the wedding.
Mhm.
And yet the guests had a blast. They had so much fun. So do the best you can, and then the day of the wedding, let go. Just let go, enjoy, because you've trusted your event to all of us who are professionals, and trust us that we're going to do an amazing job. So with that being said, Annie, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing a few minutes out of your day for our viewers out there in YouTube land. And you guys are awesome. And for all of the people that are watching this, please tune in next week, because we will have another fine interview for you. If you liked what we did today, click the like on the YouTube. If you have a comment, make a comment. If you want to share it, share. If you want to subscribe, whatever you do. So we will see everyone next week with a new guest. And we thank all of our viewers, and particularly Annie, for joining us. So may everyone have a wonderful rest of the day, and may God bless each and every one of you.